Greetings, friends. A psychological thriller that is laced up with mystery in an intricate fantasy world. Sounds fun. And that's right, we are discussing the fifth season by N.K. Jemisin. It's published by Orbit Publishers. It is over 464 pages long and approximately contains 130,000 words. Welcome, you are in for a treat. Before moving on to the summary, I would like to describe a certain ideology from the story that's given inside the book itself. And this goes as Miaslim. Miaslim was a orogene. Orogene are people who are capable of causing or quelling earthquakes. And he was supposedly a mass murderer. He even tried to kill the king of Umines, which was the major dynasty at the time, but he was neutralized by Shemsena. Now this puts on the narrative of Miaslim, or every orogene being evil and every Shemsena counterpart, that is a guardian, being good. This is very interesting because the world of stillness is very difficult, and it's more difficult if you are an orogene. And that was the case of one of the female protagonists, the Maya. The Maya was a normal Kirche going girl who used to play with her friends and was a bit of a tomboy in nature. But circumstances dictate she became an orogene. She was initially a human, but she became an orogene due to ways that it was not told in the book. After becoming an orogene, her life took a 180-degree turn because society only wishes death and discrimination against orogene. She somehow survived being alive, enclosed in the barn by her family and living life like a cattle. She was devoid of any refuge, but slowly finds some refuge in her guardian known as Shafa. Now the word guardian may seem like he must be very caring, or they have some humanity in them because they were basically they were basically saving a bunch of orogenes who were dubbed evil by the entire society and the entire world apparently. But that was not the case. The Maya is made understood her place as a potential Miaslim, and she is taken to the place called Fulcrum where they are taught the ways of orogeny. And the ways of teaching usually are very, very inhumane. And she slowly explores her life as an orogene, quickly adapting to the circumstances, following orders, and slowly coming to realize that orogenes are weapons. They are not allowed to have human emotion, they're not allowed to have human society, but only follow orders as they are supposed to. They're not supposed to say no to guardians. Guardians that were supposedly were very human-like sounding name, but they are completely opposite of the spectrum. They are totally inhuman creatures that are somehow still human, as they use very inhuman means such as breaking bones and causing physical and mental trauma on orogene, so they understand that they may be a potential threat. And they are very inhuman, but we'll discuss that later. But the Maya really gets on hold of her life as an orogene, and she slowly adapts herself and becomes Cyanide. Cyanide is a person who is now accustomed to the life of Fulcrum and her self-image as an orogene. She has now somewhat accepted and is now natural around being treated as an orogene, being treated as a suppress and a weapon. In her last mission, where she is ordered to produce a child with the most powerful orogene, a 10-ringer orogene that we have come across in the story, as well as another aspect of the mission, she somehow, now that the person who has accustomed to being a weapon now discovers life as a human by accident or means that we do not understand. And that leads to a society that actually accepts orogene as humans. And that throws her into the deep end of mental turmoil and actually trying to accept but reject her normal life as an orogene. Orogene are humans. They are human from deep inside, but with some special powers. After her period of freedom, and after it was snatched away from her, we come to the last part of the story of the Maya slash Cyanide, now who becomes Essen. The end of Cyanide's life and start of Essen's life occurred with a very, very treacherous and traumatic event. Due to that specific event, Cyanide ends up losing all of her acquaintances and her only child at that time. She tries to put that away from her mind and actually dons another personality called Essen. She tries to live a normal life. She becomes a wife and a mother of 2 children. But a certain event, a season, actually triggered a subtle change. This change that was brought by a season now caused Essen a lot of problems. We again see in this specific period of Cyanide to Essen how Orogenes are hunted down. If in case they actually betray Fulcrum and the people of Fulcrum, if they are not following the orders, they will be neutralized and dealt with in a very inhuman way. And that finally leads to Essen's life, as we discussed. And Essen is now this person who is so broken inside from the past events and whatever happened in the future due to whatever reasons. She is so broken from inside, but still trying to find her daughter and husband in a world that is now finally showing its real color. The world that was written in the history as it is and was suppose you can say it was in a dormant state, now became active. All of the mysteries of the world now were actively interacting with our main character and her acquaintances, while in all of this chaos she was trying to find her daughter and her husband. And finally, during this time only, the past that she tried to leave behind caught up to her and caused this very, very organized chaos at the end of the story. And that was the total somehow narrative of the story, that all of it is based on the first ideological story that I told you of Miaslim. Miaslim is evil. All Miaslims are evil. It's assumed like that. Despite all the good or bad, the actual personality of an Orogene can be. Let's move on to the character section. First, we will discuss the character of the Maya. The Maya is a small girl. She goes to Kirche to actually learn about the world, and also she used to have many friends to play with. But circumstance dictate that she became an Orogene. Her biggest strength is that she can survive. She can survive even the hopeless of situation where others would succumb. She would probably survive. And her second and third strength is her innate curiosity and good observation skills. Using these three, she actually hones her way through Fulcrum. She becomes a student that actually is well reputed among seniors and actually is well studied. And all of these features of curiosity, being intelligent, actually helps her throughout her life as Cyanide, as Essen. Because all of these 3 lives are basically extensions of the Maya's life. Secondly, the weakness of the Maya, if we are to point out, is that she is naive. She does not know about the evils lying around her. When she tried to actually make some friends, we see some of that, because she thought she was making friends, but she got into a very big mess where she came to understand a very crucial lesson, that Orogenes usually do not have friends. They are weapons. They will try to betray each other and cause serious harm if they think that they have to survive or they can survive through that method or just enjoy. There's a mystery that she now come to realize, that Orogenes are no normal people. Other than that, the background where she comes from, we have discussed, the Maya was a normal school-going girl. She was a bit tomboy of nature at that period of time, but that certain development of her being a normal girl to her being an Orogene, this was discovered when she actually pushed her bully at that time in school, or Kirche as it called in this world, and she caused the entire earth to shake and caused a crack in between. And that led to her being found out as Orogene, and that completely changed from what might be a kind girl to actually a girl who is now so desperate and so Wait a minute, give me a minute, please. Yeah. To actually now a girl who is so desperate and so isolated that she's just trying to barely survive anyhow. She's so relentless, she's just trying to survive. That was the biggest development of the Maya's life. After when she came to Fulcrum, there was some minor developments, that is meeting Shafa, understanding her place as an origin, and all of those did happen. But her main relationship with Shafa impacted her the most, because Shafa, her guardian, was the one that actually made her understand that she might be a Miaslam. He narrated her the story he narrated the entire story of Miaslam and Shemsena. She was happy to hear it because she was partially accepting Shafa at that moment of time. But when he exaggerates that you the Maya, you might be a potential Miaslam, and in order for her to understand that she can be, and she has to control herself, she has to control orogeny is very bad if the origin actually lose his or her temper, and he breaks her wrist during that process. So that development had a big impact in the Maya's self-image as origin, and that changed her completely. She now closed her walls of society after that. And those were the total points of the Maya. If you were asked what is the role of the Maya was one of the female protagonists of our story, and she is one of the oppressed orogines that we discover. Other than that, what relations did she have? She had the relation with Shafa. Shafa was her guardian, and guardians, as we already explored, are not human creatures by any sorts. Lastly, the only motive of the Maya at this moment of time and this time of her life is to survive by any means. She just wants to survive. The situation is that bad. Moving on to Shafa. Shafa is an older gentleman, a man perhaps in his 40s. He's tall, he's very lean. He's also pale by color. He has silver eyes, silver hair, and this inhuman countenance. Despite all that, we see that the character of Shafa is just inhuman. He does not project any humans. He does not really project any attractions or any dislikes of sorts. But we do understand that guardians by nature, they have the strength to negate orogeny. They can negate orogeny somehow and control orogines. They are inhuman by nature. They use he used like very inhuman practices to actually control orogines as weapons. But we see that he is different from other guardians because he has some ambitions, and due to this ambition, he sees that it can be fulfilled by the Maya. He has some connection and some affection for the Maya. That's it. Other than that, the background, the actual role, he had a role to actually make the Maya understand that she was a potential Miaslam. But other than that, his background, his goals, all of this were not explicitly mentioned. We do not know what all these things are, but we do know that he is a red light, a very, very big red flag for the Maya if the Maya does something that he does not like. Moving on to Cyanide. Cyanide is the second phase of the Maya where she becomes a foreringer. She is a young woman, perhaps of age 20 or somewhere around there, and she has fully accustomed to the life of Fulcrum. Now discussing her personality traits, her strength is that she now has adapted very well to the life of Fulcrum. She understands the politics, what to do, what not to do, to upset or to keep happy the seniors. Then she also now is somewhat cold-hearted. She also now is somewhat even just following orders and having an ambition to follow these orders. She has developed this ambition that is very key for her life as of now. But the main disadvantages of her personality as Cyanide is one of her strength only, that she has now somewhat accepted her image as an origin, which causes a lot of turmoil moving on when she is exposed to actually the prejudice aspect, which she did not consider earlier on. She just accepted, okay, I'm an origin and I have to be ordered around. But when the aspect of human comes in, she is in turmoil. She is in mental anguish at many points of the story. The key relations of cyanide was with alabaster. Alabaster was the ten ringer, the most powerful origin in the story that we came across so far, and they were tasked to produce a child. Because he was so powerful, his lineage was very important to continue. And during this mission of cyanide and alabaster to produce a child, cyanide is impacted so much by this, because due to alabaster she is able to develop and understand the extent of inhumaneness against orogenes. The extent is so much that they reduce humans with extra power, those are orogenes, into feeble creatures who feel pain throughout their lives without having a consciousness, and just quelling quakes. That's the role of node maintainers in the story, which will be discussed later. This throws cyanide into the spectrum of introspection. She now thinks whether this is her life as an origin, or she can live perhaps a normal life. She can love normal people. Then the second development of her life happened, where she discovers actually a society that might accept her as an origin, which actually does accept her as an origin, and alabaster as well. They form this small oasis of origins around an island, but that too ends pretty quickly. She somewhat accepts it, somewhat does not accept this life, perhaps because of the past traumas that she held, as well as her self-image, or whatever reasons there might be. But the end of it was very, very brutal. That scarred her deeply. The end was like her child was sacrificed by her, because she didn't want her child to actually become a node maintainer, and she somehow survived all of the ordeal when the Guardians actually found out that cyanide was alive. There was a lot of development. We'll not go there because it will get too complex, but I just want you to understand there was a big development to the end of her life. Her main role was being a second female protagonist, and we understand deeply now who origins are and how they are suppressed. This was the experience of that part, that sphere. And third, her relations, as we talk of, was with alabaster. Her goals, yes, her goals. Specifically, her goals was to have an autonomous position, a high position in the hierarchy of Fulcrum, but that was changed as she now somewhat wanted to preserve the new society that accepted her as an origin, but everything just slips away from her. And her background was that she was Damaya initially, but she now grew into a young lady, and she becomes the soil, the actually growing soil from which the character of Essen, the last character, actually grew out of. It grew out of pain and trauma. After cyanide lost everybody that she knew and everybody that she cared for, she became Essen, and we'll discuss Essen characters later. But before doing that, I would like to discuss the character of Alabaster. Alabaster is a 40-year-old man who is actually very good looking, and also he is the strongest origin we have come so far in the story, a 10-ringer origin. Now, Alabaster, by personality, he is a very introspective person. He has knowledge that just does not explain the life of Fulcrum, because Fulcrum tries to constrict the knowledge that an origin gets. It tries to control it in every sphere, but he is somehow, due to him being perhaps the most powerful so far, that he gained extra freedom to actually discuss and discover what he wants. And due to this extreme knowledge and wisdom that he has, he's able to question the prejudice around origins, as well as the history of the world that seems to be manipulated to actually suppress origins. His one drawback is that he needs somebody to emotionally depend on. He finds two such persons in that society that we were talking about earlier that accepted cyanide. That were his personality traits. His goals initially was to really just preserve the life in the society that he just found with cyanide, preserve the kid, help everybody in the society grow responsibly as origins without the inhumanness of Fulcrum. Towards the end of the story, Alabaster's goal actually changed, and he became the destroyer of the world for reasons that were not cited in the book. Moving on to the last character that we are going to discuss, of Essen. The end of Cyanide's life, where she loses everyone she knew and cared about, even her only child at that time. She tries to put a tarp over it, a very thin tarp, to really separate that life from what she tried to normalize later on. And that's Essen. Essen is a 40-year-old lady who has given birth to 2 children and is a wife of one husband. She now lives in a small village of Tirimo, and she hoped to live a normal life, but circumstances again dictated something else. One such factor, I'll discuss the development that changed and that started Essen, is that the development of a apocalypse in the world. And the apocalypse name is season. The season equals apocalypse in this world, and that caused her husband to actually find out that their child, the youngest child, is an origin that makes him kill that child and actually run away with the older child. Now that development, whatever Essen / Cyanide tried to normalize, tried to eat up the past, all of that comes out, and all of a sudden sends her into a downward spiral. Coming to the personality of Essen, she was once a caring mother, also powerful orogeny now. She has practiced orogeny for a much longer time now. And as well as Essen, as we see her more closely, she is quite weak from inside. She has tried to separate her life. But the second development that's very imminent in the story is that her past caught up to her. And all the mysteries of the world that she only read and heard about came standing in front of her. And that reveals to us her very, very weak character, that she was, although still very intelligent and still very sharp from her life as Cyanide, she is now in heavy emotional turmoil from all the traumas that she already had. And despite all this, she maintains hope, trying to find her husband and her older child. Other than that, the origins of Essen we have already discussed. The goals of Essen now is just to try to find Jija, that's her husband, and her older child, her daughter. Other than that, her physical traits we already talked of. And before moving on to the setting of the book, I would just like to discuss one aspect, another one short excerpt from the story. Listen well. There was an age before season, when life and earth, its father, thrived alike. In brackets, life had a mother too. Something terrible happened to her. Bracket close. Earth, our father, knew he would need clever life, so he used seasons to shape us out of animals. Clever hands for making things, and clever minds for solving problems, and clever tongues for working together, and clever discipline to warn us of danger. The people became what Father Earth needed, and then more than he needed. Then we turned on him, and he burnt in hatred for us ever since. Remember what I tell. This is Low-Risk Recitation, The Making of Three People, Part 1. At the end of every chapter, there is one excerpt from the book that might be of, suppose, an eminent or even big personality, a researcher, these universities existing in this world. And that leads the reader to understand that this world is much more than what we actually read as the perspective of the main protagonist. It's much more diverse and dynamic. And the layer of depth that it adds just increases the enjoyment of reading. Other than that, the history of the world that is very, very interesting is that the world, as I already mentioned, that seasons in this world do not mean summer, winter, or any other season. The season word specifically means an apocalypse. An apocalypse that's caused by a major earthquake in the earth that bursts open a crack, spewing out ash, sulfur, and poisonous gases out in the atmosphere, covering the entire atmosphere for years, if not thousands of years. And this causes the history of the world, now that we are already living in 2700 plus years of records, it's very distorted. The history is lost, forgotten, the technology is lost, forgotten. Even though we have technology in this world, such as shower heads, we have telegraph in this world, but it's not very advanced. Another aspect that this season brought is that the season, despite whatever it did with the history of the world, the current history was shaped through the seasons. And this history is known as stone lore. As the name suggests, stone lore has a tendency of permanency. People just accept it without questioning it. And stone lore also helps them in many various ways, because it dictates how to live and how to survive in a season. It dictates, okay, you should be self-sustained. You should store caches, or basically make storehouses to store grains. You should overgrow grass. And all of these tips of architecture and different things really help human live and survive through seasons, is what stone lore actually helps. And lorists are actually people who become mouthpiece of stone lore. Other than the history of the world currently has some prevalent technology, some roadways connections. It also has major university scholars, researchers studying orogeny and different aspects of the mysteries of the world. We also see Humans. Humans is the city where Fulcrum is based on, and it is the last standing kingdom after it has been tethered after so many seasons. And we also see that the life of people in the stillness is very, very weird, because the society in the entirety of stillness is situated around calms. Now we'll just discuss how society is in stillness and how it changes when a season triggers. The society in stillness is based around calms. Calm stands for actually community, but calms actually mean a close inbounded society of people that are self-sustained, ready when a season hits. They are self-sustained in such a way that the boundary around it might be of wood, they might be of rock, or even stone, cement, whatever it may be. But people inside, some are agriculture specialists, some are workers, some are breeders, some are guards, that are usually dependent on their race, their physical features, and their strengths that are determined. They also have a governance inside it. There might be a town head, or different governors, multiple governors, representative, a democratic way of living. So all of this various dynamics that runs inside a com makes each one of the com unique. And through the season, the com is the only shelter that you might have that might guarantee some possibility of life. A com is also important because although it provides refuge, it also is the only way of income in this world. The people of the com are more interesting, in fact, because people are distributed in workers, guards, and breeders. The book does not describe this. I described it personally, because workers are people like, suppose, doctors, and guards are people like Sansit. Each class or each race in this world is distinct. You can tell about with their hair color, their physique, what kind of race they belong to. And with respect to this race, often people are designated such kind of work. Sanzid are people with heavy bulk, so they are designated usually as guard. And using this analogy, we also have a certain aspect of people known as breeders. Now, breeders are people who actually, as the name suggests, they breed. And just because of the desired physical features they might have, and people usually do that for even political connections in big kingdoms such as Humans. Moving on, a society during a season becomes so devoid of any unity that people become desperate. Due to whatever reason, a season may cause a certain com to be destroyed, and that destruction of coms lead to some people called comless. Comless people are, as the name suggests, are people without a com, and that leads basically a life in season without a com is a death sentence, because you cannot have really the mysteries of the world really come to life in a season, and there are many dangers in a season that you have to face. And after all that, being calmless, you try to desperately enter a calm. A calm, on the other hand, during a season closes all its door because more people, that means more mouth to feed, and a season that can potentially last 100 years, the people also might have to eat human flesh, and cannibalism is existent in this world during seasons. So all of these extremities occur during a season, and the entire world of stillness is devoid of any humaneness. And this season is what we discover through the perspective of Essen. In Essen's life, the season does occur, and we explore it totally. And it's a very fun ride. Lastly, we would like to discuss much more about the language style. The language style is plain American English, but with normal vocabulary. There are some certain vocabulary of the book that again makes it different. It has vocabulary such as earth fires, comms, kirches. Kirches means school. Comms mean a community. Earthfire is a slur used by people of stillness. So all of this adds up to the depth of the story, and it makes the world so much more dynamic. Other than that, the vocabulary is normal English. The narrative style, on the other hand, is an unsung hero of this book, because the narrative style makes you a child in front of a very experienced storyteller. The storyteller is so balanced in the way of his storytelling that he exaggerates where he needs to, but he is as simple and as sharp when he needs to. When he describes vividly a scene, he also keeps it short when needed, and it just pricks your heart like a prick. So these aspects of narration was very brilliant. As well as there are two types of narration. Other than this witful storytelling kind of narration, there was another kind of narration that during Essen's life, the Essen's perspective, it was a second person narration, while in Damaya and Cyanite's life, it was a third person narration. And this narration did not seemingly have any bias, other than the fact that in Essen's perspective, it was like somebody from future was narrating to her what she was feeling, what she was thinking about, and when she was breaking down. It was like it was future determined, and that adds another very weird but interesting dynamic to the narration. Character dialogue. Each character dialogue is based on their character personality and fits their character perfectly, because the choice of word and the framing of the sentence, the way of slurs, all of these things are so appropriate to a character, and their emotion of that time is projected. One such dialogue I would like to read you is the dialogue of Alabaster when he's talking to Cyanite. Language, you're such a proper thing back at Fulcrum. What happened? So such a very witty and very good way of dialogue. So such was the way of dialogue, where he also used italics and exclamations wherever needed to actually express what the character was saying at that point of time. Now, this being a psychological genre, I would like to point out one last thing, that the three lives, the Damaya life, the Cyanite life, and the Essen life, these three lives do not run chronologically in the story. They move on alternatively. If the first chapter was of the Maya, the second chapter would be of Essen or Cyanite, anything. But these alternative patterns of chapters makes it a very good psychological genre book, because we just explored each character without knowing their relation and coming to an understanding at the end of the book. Aim of the book is to really tell you in this intricate world how this life of suppressed really is, because we did not really explore any perspective of normal people. We were exploring the perspective of origins in this world, and that allows us to understand how human that are deemed non-human in a society try to live. And my analysis of this book is somewhat similar, but it also includes the roller coaster of a journey and the centralization around the Maya, Cyanite, and Essen, who at the end of the story proves to be special, proves to be somebody who is able to survive through all these difficult times and difficult situations. But through this roller coaster, I'm reminded of many things of our own world, about Renaissance, how to think differently, also of different separations that might be ongoing in this world. And lastly, before leaving you guys, I would like to just point out one last thing about this book in the analysis that I really like, is that this book is so witful. It's full of wit. The writer has a lot of wit and wisdom. He narrates it and takes us in the journey. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. The aim of this entire video was to introduce this book to you and give a justice to the author of the hard work that he has actually done in the world of AI, after all. And secondly, I hope this encourages you to read and pick up some book point of time in the day. If not, do not worry, I will keep improving my content. And secondly, there will be more videos that might actually click on your curiosity like the Maya and make you read some more books. Other than that, we will see you next time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.